States.
Can I mention another branch of government? Let me mention the unspoken branch of government, which is the fourth estate, the media. The fact of the matter is the founders anticipated that presidents would overreach. And they anticipated that at times politics would cause Congress to be a weaker player or a dysfunctional player. But they always assumed that the press would alert the people, that the press would tell the people. And the fact of the matter is, I think that our media in the last few years has done an absolutely miserable job of highlighting the constitutional issues that are in play. Now, just imagine if the members of the White House press corps, on a regular basis, were saying to Tony Snow, but hasn't what the president's done here violated the Constitution? The whole national dialogue would shift, and Congress itself would suddenly become a better player. So I'm not absolving Congress. I'm certainly not absolving Bush and Cheney, but I am saying that we have a media problem here. The Scooter Libby affair gets to the heart of what I think an awfully lot of Americans are concerned about with this administration and with the executive branch in general, that it is lawless, that it can rewrite the rules for itself, that it can protect itself. And you know, the founders anticipated just such a moment. If you look at the discussions in the Federalist Papers, but also at the Constitutional Convention, when they spoke about impeachment, one of the things that Madison and George Mason spoke about was the notion that you needed the power to impeach, particularly as regards pardons and commutations, because a president might try to take the burden of the law off members of his administration to prevent them from cooperating with Congress in order to expose wrongdoing by the president himself. And so Madison said that is why we must have the power to impeach, because otherwise a president might be able to use his authority and pardons and such to prevent an investigation from getting to him.
How can you say that Clinton deserves impeachment, and here you're commuting someone who did the same thing? And it's that sort of outrage that this is now a sneering attitude towards everybody else. I am king. You play by other people's rules, but as long as I am in the White House, I get to play by my rules.
But
that is something that offends everybody.
Sneering is not an impeachable offense.
Sneering in isolation is not, but this is combined with all the other things he's done outside the law, the intelligence gathering, the enemy combatant status, the kidnappings in dungeons abroad, all secret and never disclosing anything to Congress or the American people. Indeed, we couldn't even be discussing some of these issues here, like the Foreign Intelligence Collection Program, if it weren't leaked to the New York Times. If he had his way, this would be secret forever.
Sneering is not an impeachable offense. But the founders who had recently fought a revolution against a king named George would tell you that monarchical behavior, the behavior of a king, acting like a king, is an impeachable offense. You need not look for specific laws or statutes. What you need to look for is a pattern of behavior that says that the presidency is superior not merely to Congress, but to the laws of the land, to the rule of law. And that is why we ought to be discussing impeachment. Not because of George Bush and Dick Cheney, but because we are establishing a presidency that does not respect the rule of law. And people, Americans, are rightly frightened by that. Their fear is the fear of the founders. It is appropriate. It is necessary. Thomas Jefferson and others, the founders, suggested that impeachment was an organic process, that information would come out, the people would be horrified, they would tell their representatives in Congress, you must act upon this. Well, the interesting thing is, we are well down the track in the organic process. The people are saying, it's time. We need some accountability.
But Nancy Pelosi doesn't agree.
Nancy Pelosi is wrong. Nancy Pelosi is disregarding her oath of office. She should change course now.
Why doesn't Nancy Pelosi see it her duty to take on at least the impeachment hearings that you say would educate the public about the stakes that you think?
Because I think that politics has become debased so that it's a matter of one party against another and jockeying and maneuvering. There is no longer any statesmanship.
Their first step must be something that is very hard in these days of extreme partisanship and these days of money in politics and a media that doesn't cover politics very well. Their first step has to be to say, I cherish my country more than my party and more than the next election. And so, probably, we're talking about a Democrat. And that Democrat's first responsibility is to go to Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House, the person who decides what committee assignments they may have and even how nice an office they may get, and say, you know, Nancy, I respect you. I respect you greatly, Mrs. Speaker. But the country's more important. So you can You can get mad at me. You can, push back internally, whatever. But I'm going to the American people, and I'm going to talk to them like Bruce Fine just did. Now, my sense is the response of the American people, and frankly, the response of a lot of other members of Congress, would be to stand up and applaud. But you have to have that initial courage to do so.
Yes.
You are seeing impeachment as a constitutional crisis. Impeachment is the cure for a constitutional crisis. Don't mistake the medicine for the disease. When you have a constitutional crisis, the founders are very clear. They said there is a way to deal with this. We don't have to have a war. We don't have to raise an army and go to Washington. We have procedures in place where we can sanction a president appropriately, do what needs to be done, up to the point of removing him from office, and continue the republic. So we're not talking here about taking an axe to government. Quite the opposite. We are talking about applying some necessary, strong medicine that may cure not merely the crisis of the moment, but done right.
Moreover,
it's not
an attack on Bush and Cheney in the sense of a personal attack. Listen, if you impeach them, they can live happily ever after.
They get to go to San Clemente.
Yeah, they go to San Clemente or to go back to the ranch or whatever. But it's saying, no, it's the Constitution that's more important than your aggrandizement of power. Yes. And not just for you, because the precedent that would be set would bind every successor in the presidency as well, no matter Republican, Democrat, Independent, or otherwise.
Again, this is why raising impeachment at this point, this very late point, is so important, because we are defining what the presidency will be in the future today, because we do know the high crimes and misdemeanors of George Bush and Dick Cheney. They have been well illustrated, even by a rather lax media. They have been discussed in Congress. If we know these things and we do not hold them to account, then we are saying, as a people and as a Congress, we are saying that we can find out that you have violated the rule of law. We can find out that you have disregarded the Constitution. We can find out that you've done harm to the Republic, but there will still be no penalty for that. If that's the standard that we set, it will hold. It will not be erased in the future. There's a group of members, Democratic members of the House, who went to Tip O'Neill and to the leaders of the House back in 1974, after Nixon had resigned, and said, we must continue the impeachment process. It is, under the Constitution, certainly appropriate to do so, and we must continue it because we have to close the circle on presidential power. And the leaders in Congress, the Democratic leaders in Congress at the time, said, no, the country has suffered too much. Well, this is the problem. Our leaders treat us as children. They think that we cannot handle a serious dialogue about the future of our republic, about what it will be and how it will operate. And so, to an extent, we begin to act like children. We, follow other interests. We decide to be entertained rather than to be citizens. Well, as Bruce makes frequent reference to the fall of the Roman Empire, that's the point at where the fall comes. It doesn't come because of a bad leader. It doesn't come because of a dysfunctional Congress. It comes when the people accept that role of the child or of the subject and are no longer citizens. And so I think this moment becomes so very, very important because we know the high crimes and misdemeanors. The people themselves have said, if the polls are correct, that something ought to be done. If nothing is done, if we do not step forward at this point, if we do not step up to this point, then we have frankly told the people, you can even recognize that the king has no clothes, but we're not going to put any clothes on him. And at that point, the country is in very, very dire circumstances.
Bruce Fine and John Nichols, thanks to both of you for being with us on The Journal. It's been a very interesting discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you.